What has happened to small strikers? It feels like all the top guys in today's game are above 6'2", but it didn't used to be like that. So let's take a look at how smaller strikers might be becoming extinct. In the top 10 Premier League goal scorers of all time, you've got probably 4 small strikers on that list. Jermaine Defoe of Sunderland, Tottenham, Portsmouth, West Ham, Rooney obviously of Man United and Everton, Sergio Aguero of Man City, and then Robbie Fowler of Liverpool. And maybe excluding Jermaine Defoe, the other 3 were possibly seen as the best goal scorers in the league during their prime. But why does it feel like we don't have a Sergio Aguero in the Premier League today? Why does it feel like we don't have a Wayne Rooney in the Premier League today? It is all Erling Haaland, 6'5", Alexander Isak, 6'4", 6'5". And even when you go further across Europe at the moment, who are the best strikers in the world? Harry Kane above 6 foot, Victor Boniface of Bayer Leverkusen, Victor Gyökeres of Sporting Lisbon, even Kylian Mbappe is quite tall, he just doesn't seem it because he's so quick. And are they all target men? No, like I say, Mbappe is more similar to a winger. I think he works better on the wing. So have we just answered the question right into the video? Is the position just evolving? Are players getting bigger, stronger, more athletic? And yes, I think that is part of it. Victor Gyökeres from Sporting Lisbon, the man who Brighton let go and now has become one of the best strikers in the world. He is what you'd probably call at this point the perfect striker. He's 6'2" and he's built like it as well. He is absolutely rapid, he's great in the air, he's got a great first touch, and he seems like he's going to be probably one of the best strikers for the next coming years. But how do we get to this point? Because he's so exciting, because we haven't seen players like him before. Why is Erling Haaland so exciting? Yes, because he scores a hat-trick every other game, but because he's 6'5", and can also move like a winger. And one of the big reasons I think players are evolving is because of the defences. I think defences are becoming a lot more tactically astute to players nowadays. Personally, I think individual defenders were better back in the day. Obviously, with the John Terrys, the Rio Ferdinands, I don't think we have any of those, maybe excluding a Virgil van Dijk. But in terms of 1, the organisation of defensive nowadays, and in terms of 2, the physicality of the defenders nowadays. Look at the fastest player in the Premier League. It's Mickey van der Ven. And he is also, you could argue, one of the best centre-backs in the Premier League. It didn't used to be like that. A lot of these players, like Rio Ferdinand, yes, he was quick. He was never the quickest in the league. If a centre-back was a sprinter, 9 times out of 10, they couldn't defend really well. I think it was either you were a stocky centre-back like a John Terry, who could defend better than maybe anyone in the history of the Premier League, or you were a centre-back who has become a professional footballer due to your physical ability, and you never really focused on your technical ability. And this is how I believe the smaller strikers gain the advantage on the defenders, because at the time, if you are a John Terry, you are brilliant, you are maybe the best in the world at the time, but you're nowhere near the speed of a Jermaine Defoe, who will just stay on the shoulder and get him behind, and he was so clinical. Same with a Robbie Fowler, he was just so quick and so clinical. No other teams could really compete with him. I mean, Michael Owen won the Ballon d'Or for Liverpool, and he was an extremely small striker, but he was an extremely quick striker and so clinical in front of goal. And I think that was the point of the game back then, because it was so direct, and a lot of the times these kind of hybrid athletes, defenders, just weren't around back then. Virgil van Dijk is one of the quickest players in the Premier League, but he's also the best defender in the world. So naturally, teams have to have a striker who can compete with that. Because if you've got a player like a Michael Owen, who I'm not saying he wouldn't be good in today's game, as all the other players I've mentioned, but just for argument's sake, if you had a player who was 5'7" going against a Virgil van Dijk, there's no way he can beat him in the air, because there's nearly a foot difference between them. He's not really going to outpace him because they're roughly the same speed. If you don't believe me, just search up Van Dijk going up against Kylian Mbappe. So therefore, you have to meet fire with fire. And then players like Alexander Isak are born, who could probably be a top player if he was 5'7" in the league. But it just turns out he's 6'4" and towers above everyone, but has the ability of a winger, of an attacking midfielder. And like I say, just because of the nature of how defences stack up nowadays, just because they are so organised, every little bit of preparation goes into playing all of these teams. A lot of them are going to struggle if they have quite a small striker. But I'd also say it is because football is a copycat league, as mostly every other sport is. Whoever's doing it best, every other team and every other coach is going to eventually copy them, because that's what's best in the league. Erling Haaland is probably the best striker in the world at the moment, so I don't think it's a coincidence last season in the Bundesliga why Garissa for Stuttgart was one of the top scorers, Victor Boniface was one of the top scorers. All these physical units who essentially becoming a bit of a hybrid of a target man, but also someone who can play with the feet, because I watched the Real Madrid game the other night. Despite Dortmund blowing that lead against Madrid, Garissa set up the goal beautifully. It was such an easy, but such a well-weighted pass to set up Donny Marlon. Same with Victor Boniface. If you watch Victor Boniface move, I wouldn't say he's the most graceful player, but he is bloody athletic for his size. And that is what most teams are trying to go for nowadays. Yes, there are always exceptions, and I'm not saying every single small player is extinct and they'll never play again, because that's simply not true. Look at Diogo Jota for Liverpool. He's still one of probably the best strikers in the league. Look at Lautaro Martinez for Inter Milan. He's still doing his thing over in Italy. But I think there's this infatuation with these unicorn players that are just unbelievable because they have everything. They're the type of player that you build on pro clubs on FIFA. But speaking of copycats and people stealing ideas, wingers have changed basically the way strikers are evolving, in my opinion. It used to be there would normally be two strikers up top, and with Sergio Aguero, yes, sometimes he did play up top on his own, but let's not forget he did have Edin Dzeko for a lot of time. He even had Negredo for a bit at that time. And then Jermaine Defoe had the tallest of tall guys, Peter Crouch. So it was that 1-2 punch system where they had the best of both worlds, because they had the really tall striker who could get in the box, and they had the really small striker who could play off behind them. And at the time it worked brilliantly. There's a reason Harry Redknapp had Peter Crouch and Jermaine Defoe at multiple clubs with each other, because they worked really well together. There's a reason why Edin Dzeko and Sergio Aguero worked so well with each other, because they complemented each other so well. But nowadays, because of, you can argue maybe Cristiano Ronaldo being one of the best goal scorers of all time but playing on the wing for the majority of his career, or you could always throw the blame at probably every video I do at Pep Guardiola due to the tactics and how he's basically changed the entire landscape of football. But wingers now play more introverted because they are essentially strikers. Small strikers aren't dead because Mohamed Salah is essentially a right striker. Jared Bowen for West Ham is essentially a right striker. They just line up a bit further wide on the pitch and they are essentially wingers who cut in. And therefore there's no need to clog up the box with two strikers because you have the left and the right wingers coming in. So with this, surely it makes sense just to have a tall athletic striker in the box, so if you needed to whip a cross in, then you had someone there. If you needed to go on the break, then you have Luis Diaz, you have Mo Salah for Liverpool, you have Vinicius Jr, you have Rodrigo for Real Madrid. I mean, name all the top teams in Europe at the moment. Bayern Munich, Harry Kane, Serge Gnabry and Michael Olise. Man City, Bernardo Silva, Haaland and Jeremy Doku. Every team is so similar to the other on how they approach the game, and therefore maybe it has made the smaller striker extinct, because if a lot of teams are playing within the 18-yard box due to Pep Guardiola's just absolute bully ball of tiki-taka, then do you really need a player to be able to run off the line as well as a Jermaine Defoe did? And if you do, why won't you go for someone taller like Erling Haaland, who then can bully players as well? I think clubs are just looking for the all-around players. Even look at someone like a Haaland. Despite his just brilliant goal-scoring nature, Roy Keane described him as a League 2 player in terms of abilities sometimes. So you can't win, because if you are a smaller player who just scores goals and you don't offer anything else to the team, including the aerial threat, then you are going to get criticised so much. So nowadays, it feels like every player needs to be like a Gyökeres. It needs to be like an Alexander Isak, who can literally do everything that a striker possibly could do, and therefore is pushing the smaller strikers out of the game. Or not out of the game, but definitely just onto the wings. So let me know what you think. Let me know if you think small strikers are becoming extinct. Could it just be a natural cycle of they're not in fashion at the moment and all of these brilliant hybrid tall strikers are in fashion? Maybe it might change in 5 years because a new manager come round. If you like this video, if you leave a like, leave a comment and subscribe to the channel. But thanks for watching.